Hey everybody, welcome back. Happy Friday. I hope everybody's really excited for the weekend, but also excited to jump in on this amazing chat session we've got up coming up next for y'all. I'm really excited about the subject, and I know that our guest speaker is too. So let's jump right in and try and get through this quickly so we can get to the questions. Just a couple housekeeping items for y'all. These will be pretty repetitive if you have joined us for a chat and learn before, but I'll go through them quickly for any newbies. So what we're going to do
Hello.
today.
Hello.
Sorry, I muted myself. We're going to ask that you remain on mute until the question and answer portion of today's session. So that'll be in probably about like the 10-minute mark. At which point you are absolutely encouraged to come off mute and ask questions. Just make sure that you're only off mute while you are actively speaking. It helps cut down on the background noise and keeps the call clarity good for everyone. Hold on. You'll see me go on and off mute a lot because I've got dogs snoring under my desk. So like I said, you're more than welcome to participate. We really encourage that connection with our speakers. Super excited to make that happen for y'all. If you don't have audio capabilities, or if you just rather not, you can still participate by putting your questions or comments into the Zoom group chat. If you have any privacy issues, just know that if you do come off mute, you will show up on the live recording of this session. So if you don't want to show up at all, but you do still want to participate, awesome. Just make sure you don't come off mute. And you can DM any questions or comments that you have to me. Just pick my name from the drop-down menu. And that way I will get your questions or comments, I'll raise them and keep you anonymous. Like I said, this is being recorded. So what will happen is in about 1 to 2 business days, so probably early next week, everybody that registered for this session will get an email with a link to where they can rewatch the recording. And if Kelly says something absolutely amazing that you just have to listen, you have to share with a friend or have to tell a coworker, that's super great. And we want to encourage that. So there will be, I'll include a link later on, but we're going to be live streaming this to our YouTube channel. We have a specific Chat and Learn channel now. So that way you can make sure you are staying up to date on all the Chat and Learn events that we're hosting without missing out on anything. What else? You can keep up with us on our various social media accounts. We are at Power2Fly on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And we're highly encouraged that you're more than welcome to share this information with people, take video or photos as we go. You can tag us on social media. We are at Power2Fly. We really want to make sure that we are, spreading the wealth and going and so sorry, everyone. It looks like my internet quit there for a second, so my apologies. So I'm really excited to introduce you to our speaker today. Her name is Kelly Wolf. Kelly is General Counsel of Vouch Insurance, overseeing the legal, compliance, and regulatory functions. She joined Vouch after almost 4 years at Zenefits on their legal team, navigating the highs, lows, and turnaround of a quickly growing, highly regulated startup. Before moving on in the startup world, Kelly was in the legal department at Adobe, and she earned her JD from Santa Clara School of Law and her bachelor's in English from UC Irvine. So welcome, Kelly. We're so happy to have you join us today.
Thanks so much. Really excited to be here and really awesome to see all the folks that have joined for the conversation. Really excited to get started. Oh, Meg, you're on mute again.
Dear Lord, how do I keep doing this? One thing I want to highlight for everybody before we jump into the questions for today is that Vouch is hiring. So I'm going to put a link into the chat here where you can take a look at Vouch's company page on Power to Fly. Now, one of the things you're going to notice when you get there is a couple different things. First off, that you'll see the different tabs. So company info, there's also one for events, and then there'll be one for open jobs. I'm live on the website right now, and I can see they've got 34 jobs posted with us. But the other thing that I want to point out to y'all is that at the top of the page, there'll be a big pink follow button. It's going to be on the upper right-hand corner of Vouch's company page. Clicking that button puts you on Vouch's follow network. And what that does for you is it basically works like your friend at the company. It tells Vouch that you are interested in working with them even before you submit an application. And it also keeps you informed of when Vouch posts new roles. Now, the other thing that's important to know about that is even if you're not, maybe actively looking for jobs, but if Vouch sounds interesting to you, or if you're actively looking but don't see a role currently that would, really fit what you're looking for, that is totally great. And joining their follow network is an awesome way to make sure that A, you stay informed and on their radar, and B, you don't, kind of clutter up your inbox or spend a lot of time like checking and rechecking job boards that seem to never change until the second you look away, right? So I'm going to highlight this a couple times throughout today's presentation, but definitely take advantage of the follow network. That is a feature that we have on all of our company pages, but obviously I definitely encourage you to check out Vouch and follow them on powertofly.com. So jumping into our questions here, I just want to highlight for everybody what we did to kind of set up the basis for today's chat. So as you're on your screen, you can see some of the principal themes that we're going to try and cover in today's conversation. We set those up both based on conversations with Kelly about what she'd like to speak of, but then also with
hello, hi, hello.
Hey, Wahid, I'm so sorry. We're going to have to kick you out if you can't stay on mute, okay? So what we're going to do here is the conversation is going to try and cover all of these themes. And what we're going to try and do is do that using a combination of the questions that y'all pre-submitted in advance of today's session, but we're also going to take a look at any questions and integrate questions that y'all asked today during the session. So we want to make sure that we highlight the fact that you guys can control this event. So definitely, feel free to ask the questions that you want to know the answers to. If you pre-submitted a question, like I said, we condensed all those. We tried to organize them into a conversational format. But if you're, wondering if we're going to ask your question and haven't heard it come up yet, please feel free to raise it. I'm happy to either, feather it into the conversation we're having, or if we're going to cover it a little bit later, then I'll hold it back. The other thing that you can do is please, if we're covering one of your questions, please feel free to give us, additional context, or if we're just not providing you the answer that you were really looking for. We'd love to know more so that we can make sure that the time you spend with Power to Fly is well worth it. So in today's conversation, we're going to try and talk about some strategies to help you land your first role, how to get the inside scoop on managers or leaders' minds, so you can kind of put yourself in their shoes and know how to talk to them, as well as tips to thrive in what can generally be, or is generally understood to usually be, a difficult conversation. So I'm really excited to talk to Kelly about this and get her input. So as we jump into questions here, I just want to start by asking Kelly, can you give us a little bit of a background on you and understanding why you're so passionate about this subject?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, as Meg mentioned at the top of the call, I started my legal career in-house at Adobe, and Adobe is a big, wonderful company. I worked in a very large team, and I was very lucky to have a lot of managers that helped support my growth along my time there. And one of the best lessons I learned while I was there, really it was two lessons. It was one, the biggest career growth opportunities that I had were not the opportunities that people came and found me for. They were the opportunities that I asked for. So if I wanted to learn something new, I would go talk to the attorney or the manager on the team that was working on that project, and I would ask them if I could be involved. And I knew it would be something that was, in addition to my normal responsibilities, I'd still have to do my day job. But, I would ask for that opportunity, and 9 times out of 10, they would say yes. They always love to have the extra help. But you have to kind of raise your hand and ask for those opportunities, because a lot of times, managers or other leaders don't know that you're interested in learning about that new area. The other really important lesson that I learned there, and this really came from a manager, it was my last manager that I had there. She really supported me from a career growth perspective, not just a how can I continue to grow my career at Adobe perspective. And so when I was presented with the opportunity to leave Adobe and take the job at Zenefits, it was I was really afraid of having that conversation with her because I loved working with her as a manager. And I was actually really scared. I was thinking like she'd be really mad or really upset. And it was the opposite. She was actually really happy for me. And she said, I think this is the absolute right step for you in your career. I want to support you. Like, what can I do to help you make this successful? And that taught me as a manager that, my biggest impact is often not just on managing my team when they're working for me, but it's helping them develop and grow in their career. So a lot of times, that's tough because, you want your best employees to stay on your team, but at the same time, doing the right thing by them sometimes means supporting them and finding an opportunity outside of your team or outside of your company. So really for me, those two kind of critical lessons have really informed not only my career path, but also my development as a manager and a leader and who I aspire to be as a manager and a leader, because it is something that, everyone, no matter how experienced or how senior they are, they work on it every single day. This isn't something that you just learn one day and never have to go back to. It's a process that you have to keep working on. It's a muscle you have to keep building. So I'm really excited to have this conversation because I want to help equip you guys on the call about how to have those tough conversations, how to ask for those opportunities, but then also to give you insight into the mind of that manager or leader when you're asking for that chance or that opportunity to help guide that conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that breakdown. And I love what you're saying because it was a very long time, into my working career before I understood that, people are not going to give you chances out of nowhere, right? If they don't know that you're interested in doing something or that your goal is, such and such, like they don't know that that's what you want to work towards. So yeah, that's really important to kind of flag for people. Okay, so knowing obviously that we are in this weird moment of flux, right? Where we've been on, in the COVID world and quarantined for well over a year at this point. But we're now kind of seeing maybe the light at the end of the tunnel, or at least like some changes are happening. People are going back into offices, that kind of thing. Knowing that it's still unsure how soon we're going to return to the office. If people are still, in that quarantine era where everything is virtual, how can you effectively ask for a promotion when you are restricted to that virtual world? Are there, the same kind of do's and don'ts as there are for, an office presence, or is there kind of a different set of rules?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say, the virtual interactions that we have every day make it harder to have difficult conversations. And, I'm not like a behavioral psychologist. I can't really speak to the science behind this, but at least from my experience, one of the things I really value about having in-person conversations is you can read someone's body language. That's really hard to do over Zoom or over video, or even just over the phone, right? You can't see how that person is reacting. So it takes what is normally a difficult conversation and it makes it harder. But I will say kind of the core principles are the same. And this is, I think, hopefully not a surprise about what I'm about to share, but I think it's worth being really clear about. From a manager or leader's perspective, it's really helpful to be very clear and set a clearly defined piece of time aside to have this difficult conversation. And so, anytime in my career when I've wanted to ask for a raise or ask for a promotion or ask for an opportunity, one of the clearest lessons I've learned is it's really hard just to kind of surprise your manager with that question or surprise the leader with that question. And the conversation doesn't usually go very well because they don't have any information to respond to you with. And a lot of times, they need to go talk to their HR team and understand what a salary range looks like for that role, or they need to go understand how many candidates have already applied for that role. What's the pipeline look like? Do they already have an offer out to another candidate? And so, one of my number one pieces of advice that I would give, whether it's in a virtual environment or in an in-person environment, is set aside time for this specific conversation. Don't just try to lump it in another conversation. Don't just try to do it while you're, grabbing lunch with somebody or having a casual conversation. I would very specifically ask that manager, and I would say, I'd really like to have a conversation with you about my career development. I see that there's an opportunity, or I'd like to talk to you about the salary range for this role. I'm going to set aside 30 minutes next week, and here are the things that I want to talk to you about. That not only lets the manager know that you want to have this conversation, it gives them time to go gather the data. So when you're sitting down, whether it's over Zoom or in person, they can actually have that meaningful conversation with you. So I would say that's even more important in a virtual environment, because I can't just turn to my right and ask my HR leader, like, hey, what's the salary range for this role? Or what's going on with this role that we're recruiting for right now? I have to go have a separate conversation with them. And, I want to be as transparent as possible with the person that's asking for this information, but I need that time to go get it. So I would always recommend setting aside that specific time, letting that manager or leader know what you would like to talk about, and then give a couple of days. So, if you're going to reach out to them today and say, hey, I want to have a conversation about it, set that time for the second half of next week, just to give them time to go collect that data. I think it actually, as a manager, I enter that conversation feeling better prepared. And I feel like the person on the other side understands that I need time to prepare for that.
I think that's excellent advice. And you're right. It's totally something that isn't necessarily intuitive, right? Because you want to talk about these things. You don't necessarily want to, I don't want to say tip your hand, but it can feel kind of nerve-wracking to ask to have this conversation when you have no idea how it's going to end. And you might be kind of pinning your hopes or all of your aspirations on, getting this promotion. We've talked a little bit about, when to schedule the conversation and some of the language you can use to set it, especially if there is not really a formal review process in place. Does any of this change when there isn't a job specifically that you want to be promoted to? Or if there's not currently an opening, but you want to make it known, you're not throwing your hat in the ring for a specific thing, but you want to make it known that you are actively looking for opportunities. Or even if you think there's an opportunity that you could advance and maybe we need somebody in this new position to be created. Mm-hmm. Does that change anything about what you're saying?
It does, but only in kind of the setup for the conversation. I would say, if there's an opportunity that I was looking, so I'll actually give a real life example. When I was at Adobe, one of the coworkers on my team was going on maternity leave. And she worked in this area that I had zero experience in, but I really wanted to learn more. And so I went to my manager and I said, I don't know if you have plans yet for how you're planning to cover that work, but I'd really like to learn that. So I'd like to talk with you in a few days about what it would look like for me to take on that work while she's out. It's something I'd like to learn about. I know that it's going to require kind of more support from you as the manager because this is a new area to me, but I think this could be a great opportunity for me to learn and for you to have coverage while she's out. And my manager, not surprisingly, her initial reaction was like, wow, I hadn't thought about that because I didn't know you were interested in that area. Let's talk about it in a couple of days because I want to make sure that, you understand what this role entails. And, a couple of days later, we talked about it and, she basically laid out the kind of areas of new work that I would have to learn really quickly. And she, had a couple of ideas for support resources to help me during that time. And it was one of the best opportunities that I had while I was there because I got to learn this entirely new area that I had no experience in going into, and then coming out of it actually was very important in setting me up for that next role that I had after I left Adobe. So, sometimes it's just being very clear that, either there's not a role available, or, maybe there's an opportunity, but it's completely outside your area. So somebody would never think that you would want to take that. I think you just have to be really clear with that manager or that leader. I know that there's either a need here, or this is something I'd like to learn, and I'd like to talk to you about the path to getting there. And again, I would give your manager a couple days, because they'll want to think about it, and they'll want to think about what are the resources I need to actually support this to make it happen. But I do think that it's a slightly different conversation in the sense that it's a little bit more of a career path conversation or a job path conversation if there's not a specific role available. But I would also say that, at the foundation of all of these conversations, especially if it's asking for a promotion or it's asking for more responsibility, you have to be doing your existing job well. You can't be having any performance issues, or you can't be kind of not hitting 100% of your goals or really close to it, because your manager is going to be concerned that you won't be able to perform in your current role and take on the new responsibility. So if somebody comes to me and they're asking, for additional responsibility, or, that they'd like to be promoted, and I don't think that they're meeting their current, responsibilities in their current role, that conversation is slightly different. It's not that they can't get there, but the conversation becomes, okay, here are the steps that we need to see before we're ready to have this conversation about the promotion. And I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind, because, if you've just had a performance review and your manager's like, hey, I need you to improve on XYZ issues, that's the next week is probably not the right week to have this conversation. You might want to be able to show that you've made improvement against those things. And if you're not sure if you're meeting your performance expectations, that's also a really good setup to this conversation. Just ask your manager for performance feedback and say, I think I'm doing well, or I think that I've met these expectations. I'd like to, take on additional responsibility or move to the next level. What do you see that path looking like for me? And just being very clear and declarative with your manager in that conversation.
I absolutely love that. And you're right. It's one of those things where, especially if you're at a company that has like dedicated times of year for performance reviews, that can feel really scary, right? Because what the framework generally is and how the company usually handles these things. But it shouldn't necessarily be a problem to like ask for mid year feedback from your current supervisor. Hey, I'm feeling like I've got this under control, but I'm a little less stable on this. Can we review my performance and how I'm doing with my various tasks? I feel confident here, but not so much in this. Is that would you agree with that assessment? So taking into account the fact that some people have these regular scheduled cycled review sessions, what can you do to prepare for that conversation about a potential promotion when your scheduled performance reviews are not for several months? Is that something that should you just stick to the plan for it?
I don't think you should wait to have that conversation. I actually think the annual performance review is, if you and your manager have a good kind of open communication style, nothing that you hear in that annual review should be a surprise, because you should be getting regular performance feedback from your manager all year long. And if you're not, you should ask for it. And it doesn't have to be a request to get a formal performance review every single week. But if you've just completed a project or an assignment or a presentation, just ask your manager for feedback about how that went. Ask, what did I do well? What could I have done better? What would you like me to focus on for the next time we have something like this? And just start getting in that habit of that regular feedback of your, day-to-day work that you're doing with your manager. If you do know that you have a performance cycle coming up, I would say the sooner you can start talking to your manager about that promotion before you get into that cycle, the better. Because most companies start planning for those cycles a month to two in advance. So they're already making those decisions about the promotions or about the raises before they're sitting down to talk to you about what it means for you. So if you are sitting down in that conversation and saying, okay, I'd like to get promoted, their answer might be, well, you're going to have to wait another 6 months, or you're going to have to wait another year. But if you start having that conversation with them sooner, and they know in their mind this is something that you're looking for, it's an opportunity that you're asking for before they've sat down and locked in all of their decisions for that review cycle, that's really critical. Because sometimes once those things are locked in, managers and leaders don't have flexibility to go back and change the decisions or change the budget. So I would encourage you to start talking to your manager or your leader about this sooner. And especially, you know, if you're talking to them 2 months out from your review cycle, that's kind of the perfect timing for something like this, because that's when they're starting to have those conversations as a leadership team or as a management team.
That's awesome, because I actually never really thought about that. You're right. You know, if you're supervising more than like 2 people, it's definitely something you're going to have to prepare for in advance. So we did have a really great question in the chat, and I want to raise this. This person says, it sounds like we need to be more proactive versus reactive. How can we learn to become better advocates for ourselves?
Oh, that's like the $1 million question, isn't it? So I'll just start by saying that this is hard for everyone, whether you are the CEO of the company or you're just starting your first job. This is something that every single person needs to work on for themselves. And, you know, something like a habit that I've built and something that I think has really helped me is I actually set regular time on my calendar for kind of thinking and reflecting time. So I do this every single week, where as I'm looking forward ahead to the week, I sit down and I think, like, what are the key things that I need to accomplish? And then once a month in that calendar invite to myself, I'm asking, okay, well, what did I accomplish and what do I need to highlight to my team or to my manager about the things that I've accomplished? And that kind of gets you in the habit of talking about, you know, what you've done well. And it's a lot easier if you start building this muscle and you do it every week or you do it every month, because when it comes time to talk about, you know, the things that are going well, if you're just doing this once a year, you're going to forget 95% of all the great things that you've done over the year. It's also, I think, really hard to talk about ourselves sometimes in a really positive way. I think if we were like our best friend and we asked our best friend to talk about, you know, why we're doing great, or if you were asked to say that about your best friend, you would have no problems, right? You could talk about all the amazing things that this person that you're closest to in your life has done. And, you know, it's almost like you need to think of yourself sometimes as your best friend advocating for yourself. And just kind of role playing that a little bit in your mind, I think is really helpful. I also have another visualization that I do. And this kind of goes back to like my childhood, really. So I used to be really into performing. And so I used to like love to do plays and ballet recitals and dance recitals and all those different things. And I used to love getting up on stage and like looking out into the audience and like seeing the faces of all the people that showed up to support me. Like they were there just to cheer me on. And so if I ever have like a really challenging meeting or conversation that I'm going to, I like to sit for a few minutes and imagine that I'm on stage in that theater and all the people in the audience are just there to cheer me on. And that kind of like pumps me up for that hard conversation. And there might be something similar, some similar memory that you have that reminds you that you have a lot of people that are there to support you in your life and get you ready and pump you up to like be that champion for yourself. And sometimes you just need that reminder that like you could fill an auditorium with people who are there to cheer you on. And it's for me a very like comforting, very kind of supportive visualization, especially when I'm about to walk into that office and say like, hey, this is what I need, or this is what I want to talk about. It's going to be a tough conversation. And it's a muscle that I've had to build over years and years and years. And so, you know, the best advice I can give you is just to figure out what works for you to remind you that you have that audience full of supporters cheering you on, who would like in a heartbeat jump up and advocate for you. And then know that they're, you know, supporting you as you go and do that for yourself. So, you know, it's just a muscle that I've had to build over the years. And it's what helps me get ready for those moments and be that champion for myself.
I absolutely love that idea of kind of pretending that you're talking about a friend, because I absolutely have a very hard time like kind of tooting my own horn or pointing out things that I've done. And I love the idea of kind of shifting your mindset like that. One of the things that helps me is I have a kudos folder on my in my email. And I have an automatic filter set up so that what I can do is if I have an email that contains, some good feedback that I got from somebody, or, even just
Hello.
like, dude, you got to stay on mute. We're going to have to kick you out. I'm sorry. What we are, what I was told to do early on by a previous boss was to, keep those emails and send them to myself. So I have a kudos folder. I even has like a filter set up in it. So if I forward the email to myself with kudos as the subject, it'll pull it back into that email inbox automatically. And it's a really great way to, kind of keep those things top of mind for your events, or sorry, for your, performance reviews and that kind of stuff. But it's also a really great thing that I like to do when I'm just like kind of having a down day and I feel like I'm not doing real well at my job, or, I'm just like having a rough afternoon. It's a nice thing to kind of just go page back through and be like, no, I'm actually kicking butt and here's where I'm doing really well. So that's just, yeah, I love that advice. That's really awesome.
I love the idea of the kudos folder. I'm going to start that.
It was honestly like, I had never heard of it before this boss, and it was kind of like life-changing. I thought it was a really great idea. Now I also have friends who kind of like have bounced from job to job because they're freelance. And so they'll like keep the kudos folder in like their personal email instead of on their work email in case they want to like take it between jobs. But, I've never had that issue, mostly because when I've changed jobs, I've gone to drastically different industries, just because, graduating into a terrible economic environment will do that to you. So yeah, I, hopefully other people like the suggestion, and hopefully it works out for you as well as it's done for me. All right, so we talked a little bit about, kind of the place you want to be in your career, or in your, how you want to be doing in, performance wise before you start asking about a promotion or a raise. If you're in a new job, in a new situation, or new team, new company, is there a length of time that you should be in that role before you even, start thinking about a promotion, or start asking about a promotion or the opportunity to kind of level up or move up through the ranks?
That is such an awesome question. And the short answer is it's going to be different for every team and every company. So just as an example, if you're at a really large company, they probably have, more openings and more opportunities than you'll find at a really small company, just because the teams are going to be larger. And so your chance to advance might be a little bit faster in that sense. And, I would say every 18 to 24 months is kind of about the frequency that I would see folks getting promoted. It's going to be very dependent on the role that you're in. And also, there also has to be a role to promote you to, right? Like you're not, if a role doesn't exist and there's, no additional responsibility to give you at that moment, the answer might be not right now. But, I would say it takes a little bit of time to settle into a new role and to show that you're actually performing in that role. So as a manager, if I'm looking at a promotion request and somebody's been there for less than 12 months, I haven't really seen a full year of performance out of them yet. So unless I have kind of an immediate need and they've already shown me that they can completely just nail the current job that they're doing, it's going to be really hard for me to promote them within that first year. But as that, person continues on, whether it's another year or, another couple months, and if the opportunity presents itself and there's a need for that promotion, I could see promoting somebody within that second year. But I think if you're in a role for less than a year, it's kind of hard. You just haven't had that full year of performance yet. I would say the exception is, there's just sometimes an immediate need for somebody in a next level role. And if you're the person that's there and you're doing great, like, especially if you're at a really small, quickly growing company, sometimes there's just a need to, have a manager take over a team. And if you're on that team and you're the highest performer, even if you've only been there for, 6 months, that might be an opportunity for you to get promoted before then. But I would say, 18 to 24 months is usually the cadence that I see for most promotion timelines.
Now, do you see any kind of difference in this if for like a new grad as opposed to somebody who's been in the workforce for a while? Because I know depending on the situation, I know a lot of my friends that took jobs because it would get them like a foot in the door at the right company that they wanted to work for, and was not necessarily a job that they wanted to do for very long. Or sometimes it's something that you're maybe you're very qualified or maybe overqualified for that role. So do you think that being a new grad really changes the landscape on this?
I think it can, but I think it's very role dependent because a lot of times new grads are hired into entry level roles where there's pretty strict criteria for promotion. So it might be like an entry level sales role and you have to have 2 or more quarters of meeting your quota or something like that. So I would say it's very, very role dependent, but if you feel like you have an opportunity to advance into a new role, I would not hesitate to start that conversation, even if you've only been there for a few months, because, the worst thing somebody can say is no. And the best thing somebody can say is like, let's figure out a path to get you there. So I would say it's never too early to have that conversation. I mean, maybe with the exception, like if somebody started last week and they're like, hey, can I get promoted? And I'm like, probably not. Like, let's see how the next couple months go. But I would say if you've, joined a new company as a new grad, or maybe you took a role to get your foot in the door and you see an opportunity or there's a team that you'd really like to learn more about, it's never too early to start that conversation because, there might be a great opportunity to help you build that path to get there.
I love that. All right, so Charlotte has a question that's kind of in line with this that I want to get to. And I also want to encourage the rest of you. We only have, she's about 23 minutes left in today's conversation. It always goes really quickly. So if you have a question that you would like to ask, please, please, please feel free to, come off mute and ask it. You can also put it in the Zoom chat, or you can DM me if you want me to raise the issue for you. So Charlotte had said, if you haven't been able to do the job you were hired for because of priorities changing coming from leadership, is there a way to position yourself for either a different role within the company or even a promotion? So this sounds like you were hired to do, be a lion tamer, but instead they gave you guinea pigs to tame and train and whatever. So if you haven't been able to do that job because of changes from above, how could you, is it smart to look for something else that would really suit you better or be more in line with what you were hired for? How would you handle the situation?
Yeah, this is an awesome question. And Charlotte, I had an almost identical experience at a prior job where I was hired, and within 3 weeks, all of a sudden there were like drastically new priorities. And so the job that I thought I had been hired to do was definitely placed on the back burner. So and I experienced a manager change and all of that too. So I'd basically been hired and moved into a completely different job. So I know the kind of stress and anxiety that comes along with this situation. So what I did when that happened to me is I sat down with that new manager and I said, I joined this company to do XYZ work. I think that's where my skills are like most impactful at this moment. I'm really excited to learn what is in front of me in this other role, but I still want to make sure that like you're getting the most impact out of me. So how can we create kind of a hybrid role so that I'm still supporting and doing what I came here to do while learning and growing in this new opportunity? And it was a really productive conversation that I had with that manager because, she didn't actually know that I had been kind of like hired for something completely different. And so it gave her a chance to really understand where I could add most value. And she quickly realized that, I had a learning curve ahead of me on this new role. So there was going to be some ramp up time and there was still this need in this other work. So, I had the conversation with her and we kind of created a brand new job description to make sure that one, I was doing the work that I was originally hired to do, but also two, still learning. And then once I, made it through that, period of this new role, I was actually able to ask for a promotion at the end of it and start managing a team because we realized there was this need for this type of hybrid role of the company. So, I would be really transparent with your manager or with your leader that, there's definitely a mismatch or something has gone a little bit sideways. You were hired to do one thing and not quite in the right role right now. And you understand because the priorities have changed, but you want to make sure that, you're learning and growing, you're doing work that is interesting and engaging to you, and they're getting the maximum impact out of your skills and talent. So I think that that's a really fair conversation to have with them. And if it's also totally fair to say like, hey, can we create a hybrid role here? Or is there an opportunity for me to manage people that are doing this work so that I can continue to like grow in my career? And it's just a conversation that I would say you have to have with your manager, because they might not even know, if you haven't had this conversation yet, that you're unhappy with how this has kind of progressed. So a lot of it is, just bringing it to the table and forcing the conversation.
No, I couldn't agree more. And it kind of reminds me of something we had on a previous chat. This was probably several months ago, but this woman was talking about how she had been hired to do like job A, and then over the course of the first couple of weeks, because you're the new person and you want to be a team player, she had ended up, through both assignment and just kind of, the gravitational pull of some of these tasks, ended up with a lot more on her plate and a lot of different tasks than what she was hired to do. And what we were talking about led the expert on that chat to say, that's okay, and you can have this discussion with whoever hired you and just say, hey, I was hired to do A, B, and C. You now want me to do purple square and cucumber. That's gonna, if I have, can we reevaluate some of my responsibilities right now, because it's taking all of these new tasks are taking away all the time that I was supposed to dedicate to these ones that I was hired for. So can we look at maybe reshuffling some of my responsibilities, or figure out what my key duties really are? And if you do want me to take on these other things, then maybe we can discuss, a change in my compensation commensurate to what you're asking me to do. Which I've never heard it put like that before. And I thought it was wonderful, because like, how often have you been the new person at the company and like a lot of stuff gets turned to you because people are, you want to be the team player, you want to be helpful and don't want to say no. And, it seems like something that's really hard to get from under. The other thing I want to raise is, if you are interested in other chats, like previous stuff that we've done on salaries, promotions, negotiating, all that kind of stuff, I've linked some keyword like subject matter searches to our video archives. But definitely check those out. There's some really great ones. Anything by the Alora Collective or Kelly Kugler is great. There's a lot of really great speakers in there. And I'm not just saying that because I've sat through them. They're really awesome. We're getting more messages in the chat, so I want to try. I know we're probably not going to get to everything that was asked previously, but I do want to, give prime treatment to the people that took time out of their day to be here with us. So let's get to some of these other questions. Nikki had asked, would you wait to talk about a promotion before or after going on maternity leave? They say, I've been in my current role for 2 years. I know they're looking for someone to fill my shoes while I'm away. I'm a little nervous about what that means when I get back, and would like to assert myself, but I'm nervous to ask because I'm heading out on leave. So part of me feels like this is a very unique American perspective, right? Because like, Europeans don't feel bad for going on maternity leave or paternity leave, because they get a lot of like really great perks that we don't. They don't feel bad about going on vacation. They don't feel bad about putting up out of office messages, but Americans do, and we're very much cultured to do that. So how would you handle this situation?
Yeah. And when I saw Nikki's question come in, I was like, okay, well, I could put my legal hat on and tell you the legal answer. But that's not the practical answer. So I'll just start with that. Like legally, you just have to imagine as if like your maternity leave is this like little, it's almost like you like enter a fairy kingdom and then you exit at the end. And this is as if nothing happened in the timeline of your career. You shouldn't be treated any differently by your employer because you took leave. If you were up for a promotion or up for a raise, that should happen as if nothing else has happened, right? it's as if the leave never happened from a career perspective. But of course it does. And the very practical issue is you're going to be out for a few months because you are, creating and like ensuring the survival of a tiny human being in that time, which is, an incredibly important job to do. So yeah, I 100% understand your anxiety and your question. And I think part of what I would consider if I was in your shoes is, how soon are you heading out on leave and how soon are you looking for this promotion to take place? Because if you have an opportunity to start working in your new role before your leave begins, then I would say, ask for it now, because there's really, I think that would be, if you have time to get settled and learn and be able to, get the team ready for your coverage while you're out, I would say the sooner the better. I mean, the answer from the team might be like when you get back, but I think that if you have time to transition into that role before you go out, I would ask for it sooner than later. The main reason I would say if you have time to kind of get into the role before you leave is because it's hard to kind of develop a coverage plan if you don't know what the role responsibilities are yet, because you're not really in that role. So if they do need to bring in a temp or somebody to cover some of those responsibilities, that's really hard to do if it's brand new responsibilities that you don't really have time to kind of get ramped up on. But, I think that there's very little risk in you asking for this now. And especially if you have the chance to kind of really get into the role and learn the role and develop a comprehensive coverage plan before you go out. I mean, I think, it's also a really great way for your company to show that they support, parents and people that need to take time off to support their growing families. So it's a really big opportunity for your company to show that, they support you as well. So I would ask if you have that chance to get into the role beforehand.
I think that's great. It's also, just goes to kind of show and underline to the company that like you're looking beyond what just, the next, several months or half a year or whatever that looks like for you. You're looking beyond that. So that's great. We have a lot of people asking really awesome questions in the chat. So I'm going to try and get to more of these. This one person had sent me like a lot more detail involved, but the gist of it is, if you are, you talk to this person, had talked to their management, and they had agreed to a raise for this person back in 2019. Obviously, COVID throws a bone and a wrench into the works, like it has happened for a lot of people. And then later, through a couple of different things happening, they find out that a coworker whose package was supposed to be tied up with theirs got approved and has been put through, and this person's hasn't. So if you feel like you're maybe getting the runaround from your from your manager or your supervisor, or even if you just feel like there's something like holding up the works, even if it's not personal, is there any, like, what advice can you give to this person to like either kind of push things along without feeling like you are being a little demanding, or even maybe like pointers for what to talk about, if you are able to set a meeting to like really hash this out or figure out what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of hit it head on there. You have to be super direct with your manager or with your HR team and ask for more information about what's happening here. Because if they're not giving you a clear answer about why your raise has not been processed, that's, one, really unfair to you because they've promised you this for over a year now. But two, like, they need to be able to stand behind the decisions that they're making. And so, if they're saying things like, oh, we're putting all raises on hold or all promotions on hold, but of somebody else who got promoted or got a raise, I think you need to be really direct with them. And, another tool that every single person always has is the chance to go find another opportunity. And you will be surprised how quickly companies tend to move and to fix things once you show up with a job offer in hand. So, I know that's not always the easiest thing to do, right? Because you have to go look for a new role and you have to go through the interview process and you have to get that offer. But especially if your employer has been dragging their heels, whether it's on a raise or a promotion, and they're not giving you a satisfying answer, one of the strongest tools you have in that conversation is to come back with a competing offer, either from another team at your company or, another offer from an outside company. And, it's something that I had to do at one point in my career. And it actually helped me understand kind of what the market value of my skills were as well, because sometimes it's really hard to get that level of transparency from conversations with your current employer, because most employers will have salary ranges, and those salary ranges are based on data that you'll probably never see. And so even if you ask what the salary range is for your role, that's just one company's perspective. So if you can go out and get another offer from another company, it gives you that additional data, and it gives you that additional tool to really force them to either give you that raise or give you that promotion, or you have this other great opportunity that you can walk away to. And, I'll just say, as a manager, I find it extremely frustrating when stuff gets kind of tied up in the bureaucracy of company approvals, and I have great people that I lose because they go get these other offers, and that drives me bananas. But it's not fair for me to sit and try to, force someone to just wait and wait and wait and wait when they have a better offer with more competitive pay than I can offer them at that time. And it kind of goes back to that first lesson that I had learned from that, early manager, which was, I'm supporting the career. I'm not just supporting the job path at the company for this person. So, I would be very direct about that conversation. Again, I would treat it as a separate standalone conversation. I wouldn't surprise your manager with this. At the end of another meeting, I would set aside specific time to talk about that, give them the time to go get the data. And if they don't give you a satisfying answer, I would go out to the market and see if you can get another offer from another employer. And then, either take that offer or bring it back to your current company and see if that'll get them to move faster.
No, I absolutely. I mean, I keep thinking of the fact that there was that recent study that said 40% of people are looking to are looking at new potential other outside job opportunities in the coming year. So while that sounds a little bit scary, like maybe the market's going to be flooded with people, it also means that potentially 40% of jobs could be up for grabs because people want to move to something else. So I love your idea of like going out and kind of trying to get that, get a competing offer to maybe hold their feet to the fire a little bit. It's also super helpful just to ask for clarity, even like, hey, what's the holdup here? Is it something that I can do something about? Or is this something, that can't be changed? And if so, like, what's the ETA? Like, I've been in situations before where a raise was promised and it was never delivered. And I was able to say, okay, well, in my contract, it says we're going to do a review of my pay 90 days in. Or, I would like to, you get told, hey, it's going to take 6 months to process this. Okay, great. Let's get a meeting on the books for 4 months from now and make sure we're on like track to do this. It's a really great way to, like, under the guise of professionalism and not necessarily like, I don't quite trust you here. It's a good way to kind of like keep that ball rolling. We did have another question that I want to try and get to. This person basically had asked about, they had taken over new job responsibilities with the idea that they would move into this new role in a transitional phase of like 60% of your old job and 40% of your new job. After taking, getting into the transition and moving into the transition that much, they were told they're not sure if there's a need for a full-time person, despite the workload being 2 full-time jobs. So is there a case there, or, what would you tell somebody if you are either given the title, given the, the duties, but not the title, or if you are, you're told, well, there's not really a need here when there is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar to the prior answer, where I think you have to force a very direct conversation and be, and I'll say this from the employee perspective and then the manager perspective. So if I'm an employee and I feel like I've taken on, significantly more responsibility, and, I have, 2 times the work that I did 6 months ago, and maybe it was under the the guise of a potential promotion, or I'd move into a full-time role in that at some point, but that hasn't happened. I would still sit down with my manager and say, I'm doing more work than I was doing before when you hired me or moved me into this role. And, I thought I was going to be taking this on because there was a role ahead for me. I understand that from your perspective, there isn't a full-time role here and that it's only part of my job, but I'm still doing the whole thing. So let me lay out for you all the things that I'm doing. And that kind of goes to the manager side of this conversation. If I have an employee come to me and they say, I'm doing all these things and I feel like I should be getting a new role or getting a new salary or a new title for this, sometimes I will ask them to write down what their current job duties are, because there's also a chance that your manager just doesn't know the full scope of what you're doing day to day, especially if they're managing a large team. So, if you're preparing for that conversation, or if you get asked to do this, I would start by just writing down all the different responsibilities that you have day to day and making sure that your manager understands that, because there's just a chance that they don't know all the different things that you're doing. And so once you kind of lay it out and you put the data in front of them, it could really help that conversation move along. But I think it is fair to the company to say that they don't need a full-time role there. That doesn't mean that your role can't change, because it sounds like it already has. And so that's where I think it's worth having that conversation to say, my role has changed. Here's what I was doing before. Here's what I'm doing now. I'm still getting compensated. My title is still the same as what it was before. I'd like to adjust that based on my new responsibilities. And I think coming into that conversation with that data is going to equip you to make that case for yourself.
No, I think that's a really great point. And it's actually it reminds me of something, and it ties into something that somebody else had asked, when it comes to trying to get a promotion. And this basically, the line that they're getting is that they haven't yet figured out the right title for the role, but they're already, the idea of additional duties or, working towards something that, if you're getting that runaround, it feels really frustrating, right? So if you're being told, well, we just don't know what the title should be, or we don't know what we would pay for that position, is this something where that data and that research would also help?
It would 100% help. And also, I would feel free to propose your own title. Like, a lot of times, your company might be pretty strict about how they use certain titles like director or manager, because that might be tied to certain levels. But if you have an idea, or what the market title is for this role, say, okay, well, here's what I propose then. And if they are still giving you the runaround, then that to me says something else is going on. And you just have to force that direct conversation with them. But this actually happened not too long ago with me. I was looking to promote someone on my team and I didn't know what the right title was. So I just asked them what they want their title to be, because they know their job market better than I do for the type of role that they're in. And so we were able to pick a title based on their feedback. So I would not be afraid to propose your own title.
I've absolutely done that before. I've even, I've done LinkedIn research on competing companies and what some of their titles look like there. I've done research on what I should be paid based on my location, or based on, here's nationwide what the average is, that whole kind of thing. So absolutely second the idea of doing that research yourself and coming up with, coming to these meetings with ideas, mostly so you can keep things rolling. But also doing that research in advance, even if you don't ever share that data with the company, doing that research at least makes you more knowledgeable, so that if they throw out a number, you will know if they're kind of lowballing you or if that's a really great offer. And one more thing I want to flag, because I know it's present in a lot of our past chats, but in case you don't have the time to go back through our archives, knowing what you're worth is super great. And if the company doesn't think that you're worth that, be ready to defend it. Know what you're worth, and then add tax, and that's what you should be getting compensated. So do your research on that. More knowledge never hurt anybody. We only have a minute left. I'm so sorry, guys. We didn't get to a lot of these really awesome questions. But I want to talk real quick about Vouch. So we got a couple answers from Kelly about, the company culture, what is their favorite part about working at Vouch, the fundamental thing. Can you talk a little bit about your word choice? Because I've never seen that one before.
Yeah. So, when people ask me about what the culture is like at Vouch, I mean, to me, it's just like the heartbeat of everything that we do. So, I could sit here and like tell you about what our values are or tell you about like what it's like to be in the office or even on Zoom with our colleagues. But for me, it's like, it is literally the heartbeat and the lifeblood of what we do here. And it's not only how we interact with each other, but it's how we get our work done. And it's something that gets me excited to get out of bed in the morning and get to work. So for me, our culture is fundamental because it's one of the reasons that I was so excited to join the team in the first place. And it's also one of the like most amazing things about, continuing to build the team and watch it grow.
That's so great. All right, so the last thing we're going to go over, and I've posted some more links to where you can connect with Vouch, follow them on power2fly.com. Obviously, you're hiring across all teams. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this page? Why you've got your contact info there? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So we are hiring across all teams at Vouch. So whatever your job is today, there's a chance that we have an opening that could be an interesting role for you. So strongly encourage you to check out our Vouch careers page. And if you see something and you're interested and you want to make sure that, our team sees it, you can email me directly. Don't ever hesitate to reach out, whether you connect with me on LinkedIn or you want to just shoot me an email. I promise you, I read everything that hits my inbox. And if you send me an email, I'll get you connected with our recruiting team. So really excited that everyone was here to join us in this conversation today. I hope if there's one thing that, everyone takes away from this is, you have so many people in your corner in your career cheering you on. And I know you have the power to ask for these things that you so richly deserve. So I'd love to hear from you if you're interested in Vouch, and just really excited that we had this time to chat today.
Thank you so much, Kelly. It was absolutely wonderful to spend the afternoon learning from you. I want to say a huge thank you to you, the whole team at Vouch, for lending you to us, as well as to our amazing audience. Y'all submitted some great questions. I'm so sorry we weren't able to get to all the pre-asked ones. But I want to say a huge thank you to everybody that participated and sent in questions. They really help make these events much more interactive and personal feeling. So thank you all for that. It is Friday, so I think this is our last chat for this week, but I want to encourage all of you to hopefully join us on chats in the future. We've got some great lineup of chats happening next week. And don't forget about our mini virtual summit happening June 8th to the 11th. June's focus is on Pride at Work. So we will be, helping represent the Alphabet Mafia and everybody that considers themselves allies or part of that community. So please, please, please feel free to sign up. It's free. We'd love to see you there. It's going to be a great mini summit to attend. Thanks again, and I hope everybody has a safe and happy weekend. Bye, everybody.